You know, for 2 millennia, the figure of Jesus of Nazareth has just loomed over human history. But if you look behind the familiar stories, behind the art and the churches, you find one of the greatest detective cases ever, a real-life quest for the man behind the message. So that leads us to the big question. Who was the historical Jesus? And wow, that sounds simple, right? But that one question has kicked off a 300-year academic free-for-all with answers that are all over the map. Was he God in the flesh, a wise teacher, a political rebel? I mean, who was he really? Well, it turns out that every single portrait of Jesus, from the most traditional to the most radical, hinges on your answer to one single question. And depending on how you answer it, everything else changes. At the heart of this whole thing is a huge puzzle. On one hand, you've got the Jesus of the Gospels, the one who walks on water, claims to be divine, and rises from the dead. But on the other hand, you've got the academic search for the Jesus of history, the guy they try to piece together using just historical tools. And let me tell you, those two portraits often look nothing alike. The real split happened way back in the 1700s, during the Enlightenment. As science and reason started to become the main way people understood the world, scholars began to ask this kind of dangerous new question. Hey, what if miracles, all that supernatural stuff in the Gospels, what if they just don't happen? And that question right there became the great dividing line for pretty much every investigation to come. So this is the fork in the road. It's everything. If you start by assuming that, yeah, the supernatural is real, then you can read the Gospels more or less as they're written. But if you start with the assumption that miracles are impossible, then you have a big problem. You've got to find a totally new way to explain everything, the healings, the exorcisms, and especially the resurrection. That one choice sends you down a completely different path. Okay, so let's go down that first part for a minute. There are a lot of worldviews that are totally fine with a supernatural Jesus, but they reinterpret who he was to fit their own theology. They create these fascinating new portraits of divinity that are way outside of traditional Christianity. And you get some really diverse ideas here. In Islam, for instance, Jesus is one of the most revered prophets, performed miracles born of a virgin, but he's not God and he didn't actually die on the cross. Jehovah's Witnesses see him as a created being, a powerful small g God, but definitely not the almighty God. Then you have later Mormon theology, which sees him as the firstborn spirit son who became a god, a path that humans can also follow. And in New Age thought, he's often seen as an ascended master, basically one of many enlightened beings who achieved a higher Christ consciousness. All right, now let's back up and take that other path. This is the big academic quest for the quote-unquote real Jesus, and it all starts with that one crucial assumption. Miracles are completely off the table. The new goal is to reconstruct a purely human guy from the religious texts we have. So starting in the late 1700s, you get this wave of philosophical movements, and each one tries to create a non-miraculous Jesus that looks, well, a lot like them. The deists saw him as a failed political rebel. The rationalists saw him as a great moral teacher, but they all shared one common project. Their whole goal became trying to explain away the magic trick. They thought if Jesus didn't actually walk on water or feed 5,000 people with a few fish, then what really happened? So the historians' new job was to find the boring, natural event that they figured the gospel writers must have exaggerated into some spectacular miracle story. Okay, let's take a super famous example, the feeding of the 5,000. The Gospels lay it out pretty clearly as a supernatural event, right? But if you're a rationalist, that's just impossible. So how do you explain it? Well, here's the explanation from a scholar named Heinrich Paulus. He said it wasn't a miracle of multiplication, it was a miracle of sharing. See, this little boy's example supposedly shamed everyone in the crowd into pulling out the food they had been selfishly hiding under their cloaks, so there was plenty for everyone. It's a nice moral story, not a supernatural event. And they did this for everything. Walking on water, nah, he was just walking on a hidden sandbar close to the shore. The Transfiguration, where he glows with divine light, nope, the disciples were just half asleep and saw the rising sun behind him. And the resurrection, the big one, the theory was that Jesus never actually died. He just fell into a coma on the cross, and the cool air and spices in the tomb revived him. Now, this whole skeptical approach didn't just stop in the 1800s. Oh no, it got deeper and more intense. These early attempts to explain away the miracles eventually led to even more radical questions in the 20th century about whether we can trust the Gospels at all. So then, around 1901, this scholar named Wilhelm Reda just drops a bomb on the whole field. He argues that Jesus never even claimed to be the Messiah in the first place. He said the reason the Gospel of Mark keeps showing Jesus telling people to keep his identity a secret is because Mark made that up. It was a literary trick to explain the awkward historical fact that, during his life, nobody seemed to know he was the Messiah. This idea just blew the doors off, casting doubt on the entire story. And this line of intense skepticism eventually led to a group of modern scholars called the Jesus Seminar. They met for years, and their whole goal was to take this skepticism to its absolute limit, to vote word by word on what they thought the real Jesus actually said. And their final conclusion was just shocking. After all that debating and voting, they concluded that only 18% of the words attributed to Jesus in the Gospels were likely spoken by him. Let that sink in. In their view, that means over 80% of what's in the Gospels was basically made up and put in his mouth by later followers. So how on earth did they get to such a radical place? Well, it all goes back to that fork in the road. One of their own stated rules, one of their pillars of scholarly wisdom, was that the Gospels are assumed to be not historical from the get-go. The burden of proof was on proving something was real, not the other way around. It was like guilty until proven innocent for every verse. All of which leaves us with a pretty provocative question to end on. After 300 years of this whole quest, is the historical Jesus that so many scholars talk about something they've actually discovered through neutral investigation? Or is he, in many ways, an invention? A figure that just so happens to perfectly reflect the assumptions they brought with them in the first place?